Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto fell in love with Mikoto and married her? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. SASUKI. It's time for school. A mother called for her young daughter to come downstairs and go to school, the Ninja Academy of Konoha. The woman's name was Mikoto Uchiha, and she was a Jonin of the Hidden Leaf. As her last name suggested, she was indeed a member of the elite clan of the Uchiha. Made famous by the Sharingan eye that could manifest from the blood of the clan members, the Uchiha were a powerful addition to Konoha's populace. Lately though, Mikoto has noticed that the clan had been segregated and shut out of more and more dealings that had to do with the village, and it concerned her. Then there is Itachi, he has been acting so strangely. I hope Fugaku is wrong in his assumptions but there is no way to be sure. At that point, a small girl came running down the stairs with her school bag. Her long blue hair swayed behind her back with its long length. Her bangs went all the way down to her chin on either side of her cheeks and her onyx eyes were full of life and happiness. Sasuke was still in a good mood over her father's actions recently. He had given her a test to see if she had matured enough to become a true Uchiha, and she had passed. She had learned the fireball technique in just 1 week, something her father had been genuinely impressed by. Her mother even told her that they always talk about how well she has been doing when they are alone. She was finally getting acknowledgement over Itachi. Hey mom, I'm going to school, I'll be home a little late since I plan on training after school. Mikoto just smiled at her daughter, giving a lunch bag to Sasuke as she ran out the door, waving goodbye. Mikoto lost her smile once her daughter was out of sight, a bad feeling settling in the pit of her stomach. She eyed Itachi's room from the kitchen, a suspicious glare settled on her features and the fully matured, 3-tomoed Sharingan eyes manifested from her onyx orbs. Mother, is something wrong? Mikoto's eyes widened and she cancelled the Sharingan, turning to her side to face Itachi, her son. He was looking at her with what appeared to be genuine confusion, and she felt a bit embarrassed over her emotions. Even if he was a suspicious and an introverted person, he was still her son, and she smiled at Itachi. No, nothing is wrong Itachi. I was just thinking about something a bit too much, that's all. Itachi kept his eyes on her for a second before shrugging and walking outside, heading towards the Uchiha training grounds. I'm going out to train, goodbye mother. Mikoto eyed him as he left, her feeling of anxiety more intense than ever now that he was in the room. Alright Itachi, don't overwork yourself. And with that, the door was shut and Mikoto heaved out a sigh, the day was weighing down on her nerves. Fugaku. Hurry home. 000. Konoha. Ninja Academy. Sasuke entered the Ninja Academy, a big smile on her face today as she wore the Uchiha crest proudly on the back of her blue shirt. It was a simple blue shirt with the Uchiha high collar, but to her, it was a source of pride in her clan and her future as a ninja. Her pants were just white shorts, reaching down to her knees and of course her blue sandals. All the outfits she wore her mother had picked up for her. I'm going to make mother and father proud, I swear. She entered Iruka-sensei's classroom just as he was beginning to teach. She gave a shy smile to him and walked to her desk, a few boys blushing a bit. Sasuke was a source of beauty and admiration for the girls and a beauty and crush to all the boys of her class, and they envied not only her beauty but smarts as well. Alright class, today, I am going to welcome a new student. He has been transferred from a different class. His name is. Iruka looked down at his clipboard. Naruto Uzumaki. Sasuke was curious. She turned towards the door and saw a blonde boy enter with a bright smile, not nervous or shy at all. He had 3 whisker marks on either cheek and wore a simple black shirt with an orange spiral on it. His black shorts reached his knees and his scuffed black sandals had dirt all over them from running to get to the academy. Hey everybody. The name's Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you. Iruka pleasantly smiled and watched the other kids' reactions to his arrival. Most did not seem too interested, like Kiba Inuzuka or Shino Aburami. A few of the older kids were glaring at him, something that not even Iruka had expected. 2 girls struck Iruka as being interested, even in the slightest, by the blonde arrival. Hinata Hyuga blushed at his presence and bumped her 2 pointer fingers together nervously. Iruka smiled at how easy it was for children to have a crush. He looked at Naruto to see if he noticed. The boy apparently didn't notice at all, as he just stood there at the door, smiling as big as he could. The other girl Iruka had spied was none other than Sasuke Uchiha. Contrary to the other boys within her class, it appeared Naruto had something they didn't. Not to say she was blushing like the shy Hyuga, but her eyes did not seem to want to leave him. Alright Naruto, let's find you a seat. Everyone began to scramble around, either trying to stop the Uzumaki from sitting by them or trying to make room. Iruka just shook his head at their silly antics and waited for them to be done. Upon the end of the sudden, musical chair game, Iruka saw about what he had expected to see. The only seat available was right next to Sasuke. He chuckled a bit. The girl just glared at any boy who would try and sit with her, and they didn't want to risk her wrath. Naruto, how about you sit next to Sasuke? I'm sure you both will get along just fine. Naruto turned to the teacher in surprise and then looked up at the girl he was supposed to sit by. She was eyeing him curiously, as if he was the prey and she the predator. Naruto gulped. He had no experience talking with a girl, so he wasn't feeling so confident. He walked up the steps, ignoring the glares he received from the boys of the class. They were nothing like the glares he received from the adults. They are only angry at me because I'm sitting next to a cute girl. The adults hate me, plain and simple. Sasuke watched as the new boy sat down and smiled at him, a gesture not lost on the blonde. Hello, my name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hope we get along just fine. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise before he too gained a smile. Yeah, I hope so too. Iruka waited for the boy to get settled in before he began to teach the class on a lesson on the past Hokage. Alright class, today we are going to learn a little history. A resounding sigh echoed around the room as Iruka said, history, making him realize how much they found it boring. Now, history is important. Just think, if we didn't care about history, we wouldn't have any jutsu written down from the past, then where would the Leaf Village be? The class quieted down after that, allowing Iruka to begin. Sasuke, as a bright young student, took out a piece of paper and a pencil and began to write down the names of the Hokage as Iruka did on the board. She cleanly labeled each one and when they became Hokage through time periods and detailed their basic jutsu and specialties. Looking over to see what Naruto had written, she was surprised to find him with his head down and lightly snoring. It was soon apparent to the girl that Naruto wasn't exactly a hard worker. She zoned back into Iruka teaching and looked back at her paper to check her writing so far. The 4 Hokage. Shodai. Hashirama Senju. Reign. Foundation of Konoha to First Shinobi World War. Specialties. Mokuten, Tailed Beast Control, Charisma. After heavy negotiations between Madara Uchiha and Hashirama, he was able to create Konoha using his special abilities. It was the Shodai that installed the initial shinobi system and created the foundations that would later make up modern Konoha. It was also due to Hashirama that the tailed beasts were taken under control and peace was spread for a time due to his negotiations. Nadaime. Tobarama Senju. Reign. First Shinobi War. Specialties: Sweden, Kenjutsu, Edo Tensei, Jikuken Jutsu. Facts: During his short reign, Tobarama Senju created and solidified many important institutions within Konoha. Under his order, the Anbu Black Ops were formed, the academy was refined and rebuilt, the Chunin exams were invented, and the Konoha military police force was created as a sign of trust to Uchiha. Sasuke had underlined the police force as it made her think of her father, the leader of the organization. It was a source of pride for young Uchiha to strive to become a member, but she had noticed that the adults did not have as much enthusiasm about it. It was strange, but there wasn't much for Sasuke to find that they could hate about the organization. Sandame. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the professor. Reign. First Shinobi World War to end of Third Shinobi World War, took Hokage seat back upon the death of Yondaime directly after Kyuubi attack. Specialties: knowledge of jutsu, summoning, leadership abilities. Facts: after being elected to Hokage by the Nadaime's last wish, Hiruzen took up the title and quickly quelled the First World War through negotiations. Maintaining what the previous Kage had done to make Konoha great, Hiruzen made smaller, subtle changes to the organization of the military. After training the three legendary Sannin, Sarutobi led Konoha through the Second World War and brought peace at a strong price. His reign was marred by war even with his pacifistic nature, and also it led to the betrayal of Orochimaru, his prized student. Upon the end of the Third Shinobi War, Hiruzen gave his title up to Minato Namikaze as his age grew. After the latter's unexpected death, Hiruzen again took up the title of Hokage and still holds it. Yondaime. Minato Namikaze, Konoha's Yellow Flash. Reign. Third Shinobi World War aftermath to Kyuubi's attack on Konoha. Specialties: Jikuken, Hiraishin, natural speed, ninjutsu creation, summoning. Facts: upon the end of the Third Shinobi World War, due to his growing age and Minato's great show of strength and valor during the war, Hiruzen stepped down and gave him the title. Few changes were made during his short reign, however, peace was absolute. During Kyuubi's attack, he sacrificed himself to halt the beast and saved Konoha. Alright, did everyone get that down? Iruka checked on the class to find most of them still writing. His eyes caught onto Sasuke to find that she was already done. His eyes then moved to Naruto and he frowned to see him sleeping. Sasuke caught Iruka's eye movements and suddenly felt bad for Naruto, even if it was his fault. With a sharp kick to his leg, Naruto was awoken and just in time for Iruka to yell at him. Naruto, since you already seem to know all of this information already because you don't need notes, please, tell the class about the seat of Hokage and what it means to the village. Naruto's blue eyes widened in surprise and he looked around to see all the kids staring at him. Grumbling something incoherent, Naruto stood up from his chair and began to speak loudly. The Uchiha girl was amazed he wasn't frightened at all by the teacher or the other students, he was fine. It was then Sasuke realized that what Naruto didn't have in smarts he had plenty in determination and confidence. It made her actually feel a little envious. What am I saying? My father respects only those with knowledge and power. I have to be like that if I want him to approve. But still. It is pretty cool that Naruto can do that so easily. The Hokage, he's the strongest ninja in the whole village. Everybody looks at him and respects him, they know what he's done and who he is. He protects us all and shows Konoha's strength to all the other villages. That's why. Naruto looked down at the floor a moment to steady himself, he tightened his fists up. I want to be the greatest Hokage. His outburst was met with silence for a few long moments, the class was surprised by his answer. Iruka at first hadn't really taken the boy seriously, but he was glad to see the kid had some dreams after all. The class began to laugh out loud, save for a few who either didn't care or looked at Naruto with pity that his dreams wouldn't come true. Sasuke didn't laugh, but she was too surprised by his response to say anything. Naruto just sat back down and looked at his desk, ignoring the response he had expected from the others. Even if no one believed in him, he would find a way to become Hokage. He would make people see him and respect him. It made him sad to think that so many didn't care about his dream, but he knew that someday he would show them all who he really was and what he could do. I'll show them. I'll become the greatest Hokage. Naruto thought as he waited for Iruka to calm the class and continue with the lesson. Quiet down. Iruka waited for them to stop laughing before he turned to Naruto. Thank you, Naruto. Your answer was right and your goal is admirable. Just try to pay a little more attention next time to the lesson and I won't have to call on you, alright? The blonde boy just nodded a little and Iruka sighed in acceptance. Alright, now let's continue with the lesson. Iruka began to speak again as he wrote words onto the board from the textbook and the children listened. Sasuke still couldn't take her eyes off of Naruto, he fascinated her. He was different from the other boys and girls she had met, there was something about him that just made her want to know him better. It radiated from him, from his bright smile and welcoming demeanor to just the way he spoke with confidence. Sasuke wanted to get to know Naruto better, and she hoped she would get the chance to in the future. 000. Konohagakure. Hokage's home. Meeting room. We can't do this, it isn't right. We have run out of time and you know it, Sarutobi. This must be done so that Konoha can avert civil war. Yes, Hiruzen, have you already forgotten the Kyuubi attack? Do you remember what it cost us? I would rather not experience it again. But he's just a boy, we can't place such a traumatizing burden on his shoulders. Give me more time to speak with Fugaku, we can't do this to him. It's alright, Hokage-sama, I'll do it. Hiruzen snapped his head back towards the so far quiet Itachi Uchiha. The elders had been arguing with him about what to do with the Uchiha while the boy just watched. But Itachi. You can't really mean it. Itachi looked at Hiruzen with his usual neutral view, but inside he could tell the boy was shaking at what the consequences were. No, I understand why this must be done. I've been feeding you information to keep the peace, but my father wishes to escalate things to open conflict. I don't want that to happen. So I will do what I must to save Konoha. Clapping was heard and all four occupants of the room looked to see Danzo enter the room with a smile on his face. Itachi instinctively cringed and Hiruzen frowned at the sight of his old comrade. What do you want, Danzo? This is a private meeting between myself and Itachi, you shouldn't be here. The man took up a spot leaning on the wall nearby Itachi, just looking at the assembled group. I was here as one of Itachi's superior officers within Anbu. I wanted to speak with him on a similar subject to this. It seems as though the elders have already done it for me, though, they share my views. The Uchiha cannot be trusted, Sarutobi, you must realize that. Itachi is in a perfect position to do this mission, but he must not remain in Konoha afterward, he will have to leave. Itachi looked at the man and then back at Hiruzen. I already have a plan for when I have to leave, I will still protect Konoha even after my departure. I only have 2 requests to make and I also would like to ask that the elders leave for the second one, I wish only to speak with the Hokage of it. Hiruzen was intrigued by the offer while the other 3 frowned at the boy as he made such demands. As members of the Hokage's council, we will not sit out of such an impo. Homura was stopped mid-sentence by Hiruzen's raised hand and a silent glare sent towards him. You will respect this boy's wishes, he is doing your dirty work, the least you can do is allow his requests to be heard the way he wishes. Homura growled and sat back, impatiently gazing at Itachi for him to begin. Well, child, begin with your requests, Koharu demanded. also tired of all the business surrounding the Uchiha. I wish for permission to allow my sister, Sasuke Uchiha, to live. I also ask that I be allowed, in connection with allowing my sister to live, allowing my mother to live as well. Hiruzen's eyes widened and the counselors on either side of him gritted their teeth and glared at Itachi. No, not a single one must be left if we wish to avoid war. How can you say you are willing to destroy your entire family when you wish to spare those two? Quiet, Hiruzen demanded from the bickering elders, leading him to have a chance to speak with Itachi. Go ahead, Itachi. I want an explanation as to why you want those two to live. Silently, Hiruzen was smirking in his mind. He was glad to hear Itachi was willing to spare those close to him. You see, I love my younger sister just as any brother would. She is too young to die now when she has so much potential. Itachi paused for a moment to steady himself. A previously unheard of emotion began to creep onto his neutral face. Her life means more to me than even this village. I don't care if she hates me for the rest of her life for what I'll do, but if she stays alive, it will be enough for me. Hiruzen was touched to hear how much the cold Uchiha really did care for his sister, while on the other hand the counselors were angered that he really would allow her to live. And, why should we allow your mother to live when she will just rise to matriarch status of the Uchiha? Itachi glared at Danzo for his question as he said it with a foreshadowing tone. My mother doesn't have the influence nor the will to instigate a second rebellion, nor would she be able to if the other Uchiha are dead. My real reason of keeping her alive is my sister. The elder shinobi were surprised at this. Did everything relate back to Sasuke? If my sister idolizes my father and sees me as a rival, she truly loves my mother more than anything. If I was to take Mikoto away from her, she would be broken inside. Sarutobi concurred with this. The girl most likely felt more love and favor from her mother than Fugaku, and it would make a larger impact if he were to kill Mikoto. I see. And seeing as how you didn't have to ask for permission to do this, you want something to go along with this. Itachi nodded to Hiruzen's question. He had indeed brought it up at the meeting for a specific reason. Yes, I want you to promise me you'll protect them. I know you elders. I know that you will try and manipulate my mother and sister into propagating the clan into loyal Sharingan users. Koharu and Homura recoiled slightly as the boy hit the nail right on the head. Danzo made no obvious move to show surprise. I can only trust you with this, Hokage-sama. Keep them safe from influence and let them live the life they choose. Otherwise, I will reveal what has happened to Konoha and the world, bringing all three of you to fraud. Hiruzen made a puff of smoke on his pipe as he thought it over. Really, there was no thinking involved, but to keep a strong facade to the elders, he had to seem as though he wasn't taking sides. In truth, he was happy that Itachi had chosen to spare a few of his family, no matter what the reasons for doing so were. He understood Itachi just as Itachi understood him. Both were pacifists at heart and wanted no bloodshed to come to them. In a way, though, this boy is stronger than I am, willing to soak his hands in blood to keep the peace. Even if he must take the blame alone. Even I have not been able to do that. I accept your terms. Mikoto and Sasuke will not be ordered into doing anything they don't wish to and will be under my protection. Now then, I think it is time you three leave us. Koharu and Homura glared at the Hokage before getting up and shuffling away. Danzo cast a lingering gaze on the two before joining the elders in leaving. Itachi's enhanced hearing picked up Danzo's final words to him and he smirked to himself. Damn stubborn youth. Hiruzen sighed as a weight fell off his shoulders and waited to hear Itachi's second request. Itachi had been thinking about this one since he had decided he would take on the responsibility of taking care of the clan. The only reason he had accepted it though was because Mikoto would survive. She would be a perfect choice. This isn't necessarily a request, Sarutobi. I wanted to alert you that I will be taking care of Naruto-kun's well-being from the time this meeting is over to the time I depart from the village. Hiruzen didn't make to show surprise. Itachi had grown quite attached to the boy after watching him as a silent guardian in Anbu. I see. And just what do you plan on doing with Naruto during that time? Itachi stood up from his seat and began to walk towards the door, sparing a single glance back at Hiruzen. You will come to find this decision was for everyone's best interest, Hokage. I am going to redeem my family. And give Naruto a place he can call home. 000. Konohagakure Academy. Sunset. Alright class, that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll begin with our basic kunai and shuriken lessons. A resounding cheer revolved around the class as they finally got to use weapons. Naruto was smiling like an idiot and Sasuke was glad to know she had experience before any of the other kids. As the kids began to file out, Sasuke watched as Naruto seemed to wait for her to get up before he did as well. The two began to walk out of school together and then finally Sasuke decided to break the silence. Why are you following me? Naruto was walking alongside her with his hands behind his head and a small smile gracing his features. Sasuke had her hands in her pockets and was waiting for his answer. Well, you were nice to me today so I thought I'd walk you home. She was surprised by his simple reasoning and giggled a bit. Are you sure you want to hang around me? Not everyone exactly likes the Uchiha. Sasuke noticed Naruto's face dip down for a second and saw him frowning. Yeah well. Not very many people like me either. She frowned at his response as she had honestly heard quite a lot about a troublesome blonde kid but until that day she hadn't met him before. Hey. You want to see something really cool? It has to do with kunai and target practice. Naruto looked up at her smiling face and blushed a little bit. She was trying to be nice and change the subject. Wow, I don't think I've ever talked to someone for this long before. She's really. Naruto couldn't think of a word to describe the blue-haired girl except, pretty. Yeah, that sounds fun. Naruto smiled, trying to take his mind off of what he was thinking. Sasuke led him into some woods that were off the beaten trail within Konoha. He hadn't been around the neighborhood before so he could only guess they were close to Sasuke's home. He found a small stump or hill surrounded by wooden targets hanging on the nearby trees. The mound looked worn and dirty, indicating it had been used many times with the same action. Curious, Naruto watched as Sasuke stood up on the mound and closed her eyes for a moment to find balance. Suddenly, she jumped up into the air and with speed that made Naruto think they appeared out of thin air. Kunai were within her hands in a second and she began to twist in the air. Each throw or flick of the hand meant a target had been hit, and Naruto was mesmerized not only by the show of skill but by the girl doing it. Just as she prepared to launch the last one, she had run out of air time and missed it by a few inches, falling onto her back. Damn, I almost had it. Naruto looked to see her on the ground, beating her fist into the dirt and crying tears of sadness. Why is she crying? What is so bad about missing one target? Hey Sasuke. What's wrong? She looked up at him and glared, finding him to be more of a buffoon than she originally thought. Don't you get it? I'm an Uchiha, the village elite. If I can't even get something simple like that right, then my father. She broke into more tears and Naruto felt himself begin to move against his will to her side. Placing a hand on her cheek, he brushed away the dirt and grime mixed with tears from her pristine face. Sasuke was frozen. No one had ever touched her so gently, other than her mother. His smile meant that she couldn't bring herself to bat his hand away, instead she leaned into it for comfort. Everybody makes mistakes, even an Uchiha. The most important part is that you are practicing, it's better than doing nothing at all. And besides, Sasuke could tell her face was reddening as he continued to speak comforting words, even if he himself didn't notice. I thought that you looked really cool. I could never do any of that stuff. Naruto. Sasuke couldn't say anything else. Nothing came to mind except two words. Thank you. With speed that once again surprised Naruto, the red girl suddenly got up and sped off for what he figured was the direction of her home. Naruto frowned and scratched the back of his head, wondering if he did something wrong. With a final shrug, he decided he would find out tomorrow at school and began to make his way to his own apartment. 000. Konohagakure. Uchiha Compound. Sasuke soon reached the gates of her home, the Uchiha compound. Taking a few steadying breaths at the gate, she thought over why she ran away so suddenly. Whether it was her stubborn pride or the feeling of awkwardness between the boy and her, she couldn't stay there any longer. The thought of facing him at school was dreadful, but at the same time the feeling of wanting to learn more about him still existed within her. I'll worry about it later, right now I just want to get home. Opening the gate, she was surprised to find the streets were barren. Not a single person was out, a strange phenomenon considering what time of day it was. Not even any of the children were in the streets. Their laughter was always welcoming when Sasuke would come home. Considering the circumstances and how drastic they changed, the quiet frightened Sasuke. Closing the gate behind her, she began to run towards her own home. Maybe a meeting was being held. Or maybe there was still some event keeping the adults in Konoha and the children were at home. As Sasuke made to turn on a new street that would lead her home, she made another, more revealing discovery. Broken doors, shattered glass, and red blood stained the ground of this new street. No bodies were revealed, but Sasuke knew that something was horribly wrong. With a sense of urgency in her heart, she sped down the street to her home, hoping that nothing had happened to her mother and father. No. This can't be happening. This isn't happening. 000. Konohagakure. Uchiha Compound. Fugaku's residence. Fugaku and Mikoto were sitting in the family room, quietly enjoying some tea. He had come home early from work at the police station as he had planned to have another family meeting about what to do with Konoha. Mikoto hid her disapproving frown from him by sipping on tea. It wasn't her place to tell him no to an idea, especially not one he took so seriously. Mikoto. Hearing her name, she looked into her husband's eyes to see an inquisitive gaze land on her. Are you ready to follow the clan in our rebellion? You have often been quiet at the clan meetings and sometimes I wonder if you disagree with the idea of taking back what should be ours. I see what must be done. You won't have a problem with me, Fugaku. The man looked at her for a moment longer before turning his attention back to his tea. He missed her frown after saying those words though. Suddenly, urgent knocking ran through the household as Fugaku opened his eyes in surprise and set his tea down. It was coming from the front door and it sounded like trouble. He stood up and saw Mikoto getting ready to follow. He held a hand up for her to wait while he checked it out. Running through the house and to the door, he saw a shadow through it and the person was pounding on the thin wooden opening. Fugaku-sama, open the door. Sensing the urgency, Fugaku opened the door to find Teka Uchiha profusely bleeding from a cut across his chest. What the hell's going on? The man looked up at Fugaku. Blood began to pour from his mouth and the patriarch then noticed a blade protruding from Teka's stomach. I'm sorry. Fugaku-sama. The man fell to his knees and hit the ground hard, revealing the assassin behind him. Tachi. Fugaku was taken by surprise to see his son standing there with bloodied armor and the blade stained with Uchiha blood. Instead of remaining shocked, his blood began to boil as he realized too late that his son really was the traitor. You bastard Itachi. You've betrayed the clan for the Senju's worthless ideals. Activating his Sharingan, Fugaku flung himself at Itachi and grappled his son's sword wrist. Albeit a disadvantage as long as he has a weapon. Itachi said nothing as he squinted his eyes and grunted in exertion, trying to hold his father's attack back. Headbutting his son away, Fugaku prepared himself for a fight. Itachi knew he had little time until his sister arrived and decided to make use of his newest abilities. With a speed Fugaku never knew Itachi had, a genjutsu was placed on the older man as Itachi ran forward. Dispelling it, Fugaku couldn't react in time to stop the blade from piercing his chest, allowing him to watch his blood stain the walls and Itachi's sword. Damn. You. Itachi pulled the sword out and it allowed Fugaku to hobble back into the house. He headed straight to the family room to find Mikoto fretting over the noises at the door. After seeing her husband bleeding from the chest, her eyes widened in horror and she rushed to help him. A hand came to her face and the slap echoed around the room. It was Fugaku's final warning. What are you doing? Get out of here. His voice faded into a whisper until he collapsed from blood loss, leaving Mikoto without anyone to tell her what was going on. Fugaku. She got on her knees and tried to help him, anything to help him, but she knew no medical jutsu and there was little else she could do except clean the gaping wound. Mother. The one word that turned Mikoto's spine into ice and made her hair curl was said from behind her, the voice of Itachi. Turning around, she found her son, just as she had expected, covered in blood of his family. Knowing what was about to happen, Mikoto got up and prepared her own Sharingan, ready to fight if she had to. Itachi. How could you? How could you do this? Itachi said nothing to his mother at first, slowly sheathing his sword and causing the woman to lower her guard a bit. That was just the fraction of a second Itachi needed as he rushed forward and punched her gut, enough to make her double over. As the lights within her mind dimmed, she could only ask herself why she was being spared a conscious death. Itachi then began to speak, and she finally realized why. There is still much for you and Sasuke to do, mother, so I won't kill you. Keep her safe, and be sure to welcome the new arrival. She didn't know what he meant by that, but there was little time to contemplate. Unconsciousness reached her quickly and Itachi allowed her to lay down near Fugaku. Right on time, he heard a door swing open to find Sasuke, breathing heavily and choking on tears, staring at the bodies of her parents with Itachi standing over them. Itachi. Why? What's going on, Itachi? What have you done? You'll have to grow stronger, Sasuke, if you want to kill me. Let your hate take over. Let it consume you. Only then will you ever be able to kill me. Without further warning, Sasuke was put to sleep with Itachi's Sharingan. Walking over to her, he picked her up and took her to her room. With it being the last time he would see his sister for so long, he wiped away her tears and brushed her hair a bit. Leaning down, he kissed her forehead and covered her up with her blanket, careful to watch for bloodstains he might leave. Goodbye, Sasuke. Within a moment he was gone, out through her open window, leaving a broken Uchiha compound and two heartbroken girls behind. As soon as Itachi left, he was assailed by a man with a swirl mask. Itachi glared at the sight of having to see Madara again. To keep the peace, he allowed Madara to help him finish off the clan, but it appeared as though the man had decided to stick around a little longer. Why did you even bother, Itachi? He asked from the wall where he stood looking down at Itachi, who was on the barren, empty street. What do you mean? Itachi asked, and Madara just chuckled and pointed in the direction of his old home. Why did you spare them? They are just weaklings that should have been killed off like the rest of the clan. Itachi glared at him and disappeared, reappearing to stand next to Madara but facing in the opposite direction. Because love surpasses any form of hate. With love, anyone can be redeemed. Madara watched as Itachi left and he thought over what the boy said. So that's your plan, Itachi. You did seem like a bright one when I first met you, but now I see you are just a fool. It wasn't long before he left as well, leaving Konoha for what would be a long time. He had to worry about his new organization rather than some petty form of revenge. It was all for his ambitions. 000. Konohagakure. Naruto's apartment. Today was pretty cool. I got to meet a cute girl, a new class, and the teacher doesn't hate me yet. Naruto was sitting on his bed, staring at his ceiling as he thought out loud the progress of his day. He had gotten back a few hours ago and had already eaten his dinner, some instant ramen with a glass of milk. With little else to do, he had sat on his bed for the rest of the evening, looking out his window and at the stars. Maybe there was a chance he would find a friend after all. He had to have friends if he wanted to be strong. Yawning, Naruto realized that it was late and he should probably get to bed. He got up and turned off the fan light and quickly hopped back into bed. Just as he was getting settled, a familiar knocking rang at his window and he looked excitedly to see Itachi waving at him with a smile. Hey Naruto-kun, mind letting me in? Naruto threw the bed covers off and quickly let the young Uchiha in, allowing the now cleaned up Itachi to step into his room. I see you're getting ready for bed, but I have a surprise that just can't wait. Naruto got out of bed and went over to Itachi where he was kneeling down to be at Naruto's level. What is it, Itachi-ni? You didn't go and get me more ramen, did you? Itachi chuckled and shook his head, rubbing Naruto's hair playfully. It was much better than ramen. No. I was able to find you a family. Naruto's smile immediately dropped and was replaced with a gaping maw of surprise. A family? What did you say? He asked. Not quite believing what Itachi said, the older boy decided to play around with Naruto and repeated it. I found you a family that was more than willing to take you in. All you have to do is give them this note when you meet them. Itachi handed Naruto a small note and saw him about to unfold it. He lightly slapped the blonde's hands. No, only they can read it. Naruto looked at Itachi and nodded, still in shock to do anything else. But why? Naruto asked the Uchiha, only to receive a knowing smile. Come on Naruto, have you already forgotten? You always used to tell me how the only thing you wanted was a family. You said it would make you feel better and make you stronger. Did you think I wouldn't help you? Naruto's eyes began to tear up as he realized that Itachi had meant what he said, that he really did help him. Itachi. Itachi grunted in surprise when the small boy slammed into him and began to cry happy tears, forcing the older boy to smile again and hug him back. There Naruto, you'll be fine. You'll be living with my mother and sister, I'm sure they'll be happy. Naruto was taken by surprise to find out that he would be living with other Uchiha and looked at Itachi worriedly. But what if they don't like me? It was then that Itachi was reminded just how much the Uchiha clan had avoided Naruto, and he was sure the boy was scared his mother would be like the other adults. Don't worry about it, my mother is a very nice woman. My sister is your age too, you must have met her somewhere. Sasuke. Naruto immediately recognized the name and began to smile. He would get to live with Sasuke. Yeah, I know Sasuke. I just got moved to her class today. We got along really well. Itachi was glad to see Naruto's happiness and turned around, indicating the boy should hop onto his back. Naruto quickly obliged and Itachi leapt out the window towards the Uchiha compound. As soon as Naruto couldn't see his face, Itachi frowned and began to think on why he was taking Naruto to his compound. Yes, the boy had asked for a home and a family and Itachi was glad to grant it, but it seemed as though another reason had come to mind. My family can never forgive me for what I've done. But maybe by giving Mikoto a real son and Sasuke a real brother, maybe I can give them something they never had to begin with. It wasn't long before they arrived at the now quiet compound. The only sound was the occasional cricket chirp. Slowing his movements down to a brisk jog, Itachi soon arrived at the building and, avoiding the front entrance, took Naruto to his room through a window. Naruto was amazed at how nice the traditional home looked and found it to be quite a change from his apartment. It was much more spacious and refined, and Naruto had to say he preferred it. Alright Naruto, now when you wake up, I want you to give that note to Mikoto, my mother. That should work everything out, and then you can be part of the family. Naruto looked at Itachi confusedly as the man stood up as if he was preparing to leave. What do you mean sleep? I'm too excited to sleep. And where are you going Itachi-ni? Isn't this your room? Itachi turned around and looked into Naruto's eyes with his Sharingan. The blue-eyed boy's eyes dilated as they watched the spinning tomos entrance him into a sleepy illusion. I have to go Naruto. Just remember to give that note to my mother when you wake up. Good luck. Naruto hit the bed where he had been standing on and Itachi decided to leave him sleep. With little else to do, the Uchiha left the house in search of Madara. To protect his family and Konoha, he would have to make the ultimate betrayal. Hopefully, Naruto could be the Uchiha prodigy that everyone wished had existed, a perfect cross between Senju and Uchiha, an Uchiha, who could love. The Hokage was not having a very good day. Combine the fact that the Uchiha had just been massacred down to the last man and the council was eagerly biting at him for a chance to manipulate the bodies of the dead, today was not getting any better. Worse yet, he felt that a certain Uchiha was on her way to meet him now and it wouldn't be prudent to wallow when he had no right to. I hope that Mikoto-san will at least listen to me. I'd rather not have a fight in my office. Sure enough, a muffled noise could be heard on the other side of his door. It almost sounded as if someone was arguing and things were just starting to get heated. Ma'am, you can't enter. The Hokage does not have an appointment scheduled for you. Well, he can make one. Hiruzen flinched as the door swung open with Mikoto storming in with a frightened secretary trembling outside. It didn't take but another second for a squad of Anbu, the elite of the village, to arrive on the scene. If there was a disturbance anywhere near the Hokage, it was their duty to handle it with more often than not deadly force. They surrounded Mikoto and had their katanas drawn, all pointed somewhere on her body that would be lethal should she decide to resist. Mikoto activated her Sharingan and glared at the masked faces, daring them to go further. She may be at a disadvantage, but she was an Uchiha, damn it. Their stubborn pride came at a zenith when they were in trouble and she would not allow herself to be pushed around by the same people who ordered the death of her people. Stand down. The Anbu glanced at the Hokage and realized his order was for them, quickly sheathing their weapons and standing back from the angry woman. Leave us, this is a meeting that is not to be disturbed. Understood. His serious tone, as rare as it was, made them know he meant business. Yes, sir. The Anbu captain led his squad out, leaving a lingering stare at the Uchiha before walking out with the door closing behind him. Hiruzen slumped back into his chair, not happy with the way the meeting began. Mikoto still stood there, albeit with her Sharingan deactivated. I know you're angry, Mikoto, but please sit down and listen to what I have to say. Afterward we can do whatever you want to do. Is that okay? He talked as politely as he could, careful to not anger her further. Mikoto calmed down considerably. She wasn't one to stay angry for long. If anything, the business with her clan made her distraught, but she knew that she was now the only thing left her daughter had. She couldn't risk dying because she let her emotions run through her. In fact, the chance that the clan would be attacked before their plans could come to fruition was a fear that she had for a long time. she just hoped it never would happen. Hiruzen watched as she took a few deep breaths and sat down in a chair across from his desk. Now then, I think it's obvious that I should apologize to you. The actions that have come upon your clan are in no small means my own fault, and I apologize fully for such. However, I will deign to tell you that Itachi himself volunteered for the job even when I told him we could continue with diplomatic options. I will admit the counselors forced him into a corner though and did not give him much choice. Mikoto couldn't say she was surprised by the outcome, still it was a lot to take in. Hiruzen continued, hoping to finish before Mikoto found a point to get angry at. With their current situation, those points were coming more and more often. We've already gotten a cleanup crew to your compound and brought the bodies into the village morgue, as I'm sure you've noticed. I apologize for breaching your clan's privacy within your compound, but this isn't a job I would leave for you and your daughter to do or see. Something like that could leave scars. Itachi made us promise not to order you into doing anything you or your daughter don't want to do, but you know that Danzo will find a way around that. I'm sure he plans to use the CRA on you, you know that, don't you? Mikoto flinched. She had heard of the law but never thought she would have to endure it. And since Sasuke was a girl, she too would be forced into its binding contract. Its main intention was to make sure the near-extinct clan would have enough offspring to eventually have it return to its splendor glory, in the case of severe losses or disease amongst members. In the end, it was a powerful political tool that could have the surviving females paired up with just about any man from any clan and forced to have their children. It wasn't a bad proposition for surviving males, for they could take multiple wives without it being frowned upon, literally getting their own harem legally. But there were no males of the Uchiha left, just mother and daughter, leaving them with few options. Will we really be forced into it, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen could sense the despair in her voice and sought to rectify her fears. There is no doubt in my mind they will force you into it. The Uchiha are a powerful clan with their Kekkei Genkai, and you know it, Mikoto-san. They see the recently deceased as troublemakers and now want a loyal populace of Uchiha as a future generation. But there are options to what you can do to buy yourself time. For example, if you pick a younger boy as your husband, then they won't force you to have a child until he is older. Mikoto recoiled at the thought. A younger boy? She herself was 27. Relatively old in the life of a shinobi but still very young when compared to the general populace. Surely those they would attempt to pair her up with would be just as old, if not older. They would want her to have multiple husbands too. This is a lot to think about, Hokage. Hiruzen nodded in sympathy. Even if she was an adult, Mikoto had enough problems on her hands than to deal with the CRA. Yes. Let's move on to something else. We can take care of that when the time comes. Mikoto nodded in assent, but then a thought crossed her mind. What will I tell Sasuke about her brother? Hiruzen let loose a puff of smoke from his pipe, in thought. He told us to not tell her anything. It appeared as though he already had a plan for her. I suggest you keep your idea of Itachi separate from that you tell your daughter. We both know why he did it, to keep the peace. I doubt he told your daughter that, so observe what she thinks before you tell her anything. Mikoto didn't like it, but if Itachi really did have their best interests in his heart, then she wouldn't tell her daughter the truth. I would like to see my husband, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen knew that was coming and nodded. It was the least they could do was pay their respects. Yes. I think that would be a good point to stop at. Please follow me, Mikoto-san, and please do not be alarmed at what you find at the morgue. Hiruzen got up and began to shuffle his way toward the door with Mikoto close behind. Opening it, they found the Anbu squad was waiting outside. They quickly straightened up ramrod straight when the door opened to reveal the Hokage and Mikoto. They had remained behind to keep the Hokage's wishes and steered away any who attempted to enter. Hawk, if you would. The captain nodded and his team quickly fell into step behind them as an escort. It was mostly for precaution on the Hokage's part, but there was no telling what the village's reaction would be to a lone Uchiha walking down the street. With the Anbu following them, it would send a strong message the Uchiha were still protected members of the village. It was a short walk to the village morgue, certainly a dark place considering the rest of the bright and shining village. Inside were a few medical ninjas moving in short jogs, obviously busy with the large amount of new arrivals. Mikoto felt her blood boil and her insides twist as she entered but kept strong. She had to come to terms with their deaths. Hiruzen pushed a wide set of doors open and they entered a large, cavernous room the size of a very large gymnasium. There were dozens of fold-out tables spread across the room, each of them with a coffin laying on them. The Uchiha fan decorated each at the very foot of each coffin along with the occupant's name and age. Mikoto brought a hand to her mouth as she looked around her, so many dead. Itachi had not even spared the children, their small coffins a dead giveaway. Mikoto wandered through the pathways looking at each name and remembering a face, a conversation, a memory of her life with them. Her parents, her friends, and then her husband were all eventually found. Hiruzen saw her stop at a particular casket and walked over. It was her late husband, Fugaku Uchiha, the mastermind behind the Uchiha rebellion and killed by his own son. Mikoto ran a hand over the wood covering him, thinking back to their times together. They were meant to be married from the start. She was the child of the original clan head while he was one of the strongest Uchiha to be born at the time. His proficiency with the Sharingan and his existing skills led the elders to put them together for a stronger breeding stock. She hadn't minded too much, already being told of her fate long ago by her mother. Fugaku was never husband material to her though, it seemed as though it was all business and matter of course for him. Of course he would breed with Mikoto and of course he would raise their kids to be strong Uchiha. There was little love in their relationship, but Mikoto had tried. In the end she failed and became the loyal housewife, but even then that did not give her what she wanted in a relationship, love. She was thankful when she had a daughter after Itachi. It gave her someone to pamper while Fugaku stole Itachi away and turned him into something that was not her son. There was no way she would have allowed him to do the same to Sasuke, even if it meant going against his wishes. Luckily, it didn't come to that as Itachi made sure he was dead before Fugaku could take any real interest in her. But even with their differences, Mikoto had been promised to Fugaku since she was 15. It was hard to let go with so much time together with him, but she would be able to do so. Maybe if she got to take a look at his face then she could. Mikoto made to open the casket but a gentle grip over her hand stopped her. She looked and saw Hiruzen gripping her hand and shaking his head. Mikoto-san. You don't want to see him as he is now. He was avoiding something, she could tell. What do you mean? Before Hiruzen could answer, Mikoto lifted the casket open and she gasped out loud. What is the meaning of this? Hiruzen sighed and could tell exactly what she was talking about. There was Fugaku in the usual garb that Konoha buried shinobi in, save that his had the Uchiha fan on the shoulders. The blood had been cleaned from his skin and the wound in his chest covered by cloth and sealed. Everything seemed just right, except of course his lack of eyes. The eyes that Mikoto had known for more than a decade were now gone, left in their wake was bottomless dark voids. Someone had harvested his eyes and she could only guess many others had lost theirs as well. I'm sorry Mikoto-san, but it is an ordinance passed long ago in accordance to dojutsu user deaths. To eliminate the possibility of an enemy taking the eyes through grave robbing or harvesting directly on the battlefield, Our doctors or medics respectively are ordered to remove the eyes themselves and store them. Generally nothing is done with them and they are given back to the clan after the body is buried. However, the council is pushing for using them in future transplant experiments. Mikoto shut the coffin and glared at Sarutobi, making back away a bit. That. Mikoto gritted her teeth, uncharacteristically angry. As clan property, they have no right to use them. I want them all returned to me and I will do with them as I see fit. Do you understand, Hokage? Hiruzen pondered for a moment but nodded. It was her clan and her say what to do with them. I'll let them know and do what I can to have them returned to you immediately. I apologize for the inconvenience this caused you, Mikoto-san. Not that I want to change the subject hastily either, but. Mikoto calmed and looked at him curiously. What of your daughter? You should probably go to her and be there if she isn't already up. Mikoto agreed. She hadn't planned on being with the Hokage this long. She had to return home and be there when Sasuke woke up so she could explain everything. Yes, you are right, Hokage-sama. If you will excuse me, we can continue the discussion another time. The Hokage nodded and let her pass by without any further interruptions. He heard the doors swing open and close again, leaving him alone in the room filled with dead. It was an odd moment for him to fall into thought, but he felt himself doing this more and more in his old age. She didn't mention anything about Naruto. I wonder. Could she have not seen him yet? Or did I interpret what Itachi said incorrectly? 000. Uchiha clan compound. Mikoto's house. Mikoto made her way through the quiet streets and felt an odd foreboding sense in her stomach. She prayed Sasuke was still asleep. That would give her time to prepare for her explanation of the situation. With such a quiet and tense atmosphere, Mikoto realized just how big the compound was. Not that its size mattered much at this point, but she had been walking through the residential area for at least 5 minutes just to reach her home that served as the inner compound with its own set of walls. It was there that our blonde Jinchuriki had just woken up and stumbled upon the front door. This house is so big. I can't believe Itachi got to live here. I haven't seen anyone else though, maybe they are outside. Naruto opened the sliding door slowly so as not to arouse any attention to himself. It was then he saw a very beautiful woman closing another set of large wooden doors that served as a gate along the wall. She turned around and saw him peeking out from her door, instantly making her go on the alert. Who is in my home? Who is there? Come out here right now. Mikoto's stress was getting to her now and she felt herself about to snap. Still though, no one should be here that wasn't Uchiha. Sorry. She heard someone say in a childish voice, quiet and soft. The door swung open and Mikoto's eyes widened. What was he doing here? Why you? What are you doing in my house? Naruto could tell Mikoto was surprised and he couldn't blame her. Still he was afraid of what she was going to say. I was brought here last night by someone. Naruto almost forgot that Itachi said not to tell her anything, just give her the letter. Who would that be? Mikoto was getting suspicious. Who would bring the Jinchuriki boy to her house? Was this supposed to be some cruel joke? With trembling hands, Naruto took out the note and gave it to her. Mikoto opened it and read the few lines of words. Slowly her eyes widened and the note almost fell out of her hands. Naruto saw her look up from the note and eye him, obviously having some internal struggle on what to do with him. Is it too soon? Should I mean, what Itachi says is true, but can I just bring him in like that? What would the village think? What would Sasuke think? Sorry I bothered you. Naruto's voice echoed through her ears as she watched him run past her and leave the compound. Not a word could come to her mind. She felt shamed after a few moments. Never did she think she would ever hesitate to help a child in need. It was just that after her clan's demise and her thoughts racing a mile a minute about her daughter, she had lost sight of what was going on around her. I should probably go after him. Ka-san. Is that you? Mikoto whirled around and saw Sasuke by the door, rubbing her red eyes and shading them from the sun. Oh Sasuke-chan. Mikoto ran over to her daughter and embraced her tightly, holding her little body close to her frame. Sasuke was overjoyed her mother was actually alive, betraying her memories of last night. The night her brother killed their clan and called her a weakling. She didn't know why Itachi would do that, but it made her angry that even then he still had the nerve to call her weak. Seeing her mom alive though, it made her feel a little better. I thought you were gone too. Ka-san. Sasuke felt herself get smothered even further by her mother's bosom but ignored it, enjoying her warmth. I'm not going anywhere, I promise Sasuke. The two Uchiha held each other for a moment longer before Sasuke weaseled out of her hold, curiously looking around. I woke up because I heard you talking to someone. Who were you talking to, mother? Mikoto looked down in shame at that, seeing no harm in telling her daughter regardless. It was that boy, Naruto Uzumaki. Sasuke's eyes widened in happiness and she looked around, frantically calling out his name. Mikoto watched her daughter, surprised at her behavior. She wasn't expecting her daughter to know him at all since last time she checked they weren't even in the same class. Where is Naruto, mother? Is he here? Mikoto shook her head sadly and looked back at Itachi's note. Mother, I'm sure you know who this boy is. I implore you to care for him when no one else will, as I must leave the village after tonight. The Uchiha downfall was arrogance. Show Konoha you can rise above that and care for a needing child, please mother. Itachi Uchiha, he's gone sweetie. He ran off. Sasuke was confused. Why would he just run off like that? But why did he run off? He shouldn't just go out alone, someone might hurt him. Mikoto hadn't thought of that. The Uchiha compound was pretty far off from the rest of the village. It would take him a while to get to wherever his apartment is, maybe too long. Some villager might try something, it would be because Mikoto hesitated to take him in. The thought chilled her. Maternal instincts kicking in, Mikoto grabbed Sasuke's hand and led her inside. Taking her daughter along would just slow her down and the sun was already starting to set, bathing the compound in an orange sheen. It would be difficult to find him if she couldn't be free to move around the village. Stay here Sasuke-chan, I'll be right back with Naruto. Mikoto quickly stripped her apron off leaving her with a blouse in her long dress. Hurry back Ka-san, we can't leave Naruto alone. Mikoto ran past the gate and through the compound reflecting on the little boy. Could Naruto really be yours Kushina-chan? If he is, I'm sorry I didn't do something sooner. She had never given him much thought. The Jinchuriki was put out of her mind by Fugaku with his plans in her housework and children. But if he really was the son of her best friend, then that meant he truly had no family to care for him. That thought gripped her heart with such sadness that threatened to break it. How could she be so cruel to him? Not just for Itachi or Kushina's sake, Mikoto would care for Naruto because she couldn't stand to think of another alternative. Hang on Naruto-kun, don't let me be too late. 000. Mikoto searched throughout the village, jumping from rooftop to rooftop searching for the bright blonde head. Alleyways, restaurants, and even the hot springs were on her list of destinations but she could not find him anywhere. It was then she saw the school and decided to check there as well. 000. Konoha's Ninja Academy. There he was, Mikoto thought in triumph. Naruto was idly swinging on a wooden swing underneath a tree in front of the academy. The look on his face, while difficult to see with the sun shining in her eyes, was that of pure sadness. It made Mikoto want to hug him tight and tell him it would be okay, but she wasn't sure if Naruto would appreciate that after their first meeting. He might not be happy to see me. Mikoto steeled herself with a look of determination. But I won't give up so easily. Naruto. He looked up and saw her, the Uchiha mother, his eyes sunk again. She probably wanted to yell at him for being in her home uninvited, but he felt too depressed to stay and listen. Sorry. I was just leaving to go back home. Naruto slumped off of the swing and started walking away from her, in the opposite direction she came. Mikoto watched him shuffle off and she couldn't wait any longer, so she stepped forward and spoke with her motherly voice. Where are you going, Naruto-kun? The Uchiha compound is on the other side of town. Naruto stopped mid-step. Did he hear her right? What did you say? Mikoto walked up to him as he slowly turned around to look into her sweet onyx orbs. She bent down and gave him a big smile. I said you are coming home with me, aren't you, Naruto? She opened her arms wide and he leapt into them with tears streaming down his face, strained sobs erupting from his mouth. Mikoto didn't mind his tears staining her shirt, nor did she mind him snuggle further into her. She just knelt there, holding him and rubbing his back like a mother should. Come on, Naruto. Let's go. The Uchiha picked him up and held him tight as she began to make her way back home with her prize. At least one good thing happened for us today. She thought with a smile. The new addition to the Uchiha was a cute one, at least with those whiskers. Like bringing home a puppy. 000. Uchiha compound. Dining room. After Naruto came home with Mikoto, Sasuke had cheered up quickly. It was a welcome change to her crying in her sleep earlier, and it almost felt like nothing had happened to the Uchiha previous to that night, almost. The quiet house was now filled with laughter as the children got reacquainted with each other, this time as brother and sister instead of classmates. They sat in the dining room, or family room as Fugaku called it when they had their meetings. Those days were the quietest. The house had never felt more tense when he would speak of the coup. But that was over now. Instead, she had two children that lit up the house and made it happy, at least for one night. Alright, you two calm down, I need to speak with Naruto. Mikoto chided, getting them to calm themselves as they sat next to each other across from her. Naruto-kun. Do you understand what it means to be a part of our family? You will be an Uchiha. Do you know what that means? Naruto thought a little while about it, wondering if it was a trick question. Sasuke laughed at his thinking face as if he was about to explode. It means I'm going to be really strong and I get to live with Sasuke and Mikoto-chan all day. He shouted in enthusiasm, getting a giggle from the girl and a smile from the mother. Well, that might be part of it, but power isn't everything. You have to be nice and sweet too. We haven't had any of that in this house for a while. Naruto nodded enthusiastically. I'm always happy and I try to be nice to everyone. I just thought I didn't have to mention it. Mikoto laughed a bit. He was so young and innocent. I hope he keeps that innocence, even when he becomes Uchiha. So does this mean Naruto-san will be my brother? Sasuke asked innocently to her mother, making the woman point at Naruto with a smile. It's up to him. Without hesitating, Naruto shouted his answer. Yes. 000. Hey guys, short author note because I don't know what else to say except sum up important events. Pull on profile, check it out after you drop a review. Also keep in mind the whole Kakashi Sensei, and if you want someone else as their teacher, give an idea about what mission I could substitute for Wave. I'm kind of getting tired of the same old thing too, ya know. On with the final bit. 000. Mikoto was next to Naruto's bed, telling him a story passed down through the Uchiha. As they were a warrior clan, it was a bit violent even if it was considered for little kids. Naruto didn't seem to mind though, as he enjoyed it through to the finish, just as Sasuke had as well. Only Itachi saw less interest with it, especially as he aged. Miko-chan. Naruto squeaked out cutely, not used to calling her mother yet. She thought his nickname for he was cute though and knew he would call her his mom in time. Yes, Naruto. He fidgeted like he was nervous about something and Mikoto became worried. You talked about the shear. Mikoto smiled as he referenced from the story, the clan's dojutsu. The Sharingan. Naruto nodded, not sure how else to say it. Do all Uchiha have it? Mikoto shook her head and Naruto deflated a bit. No, Naruto, some Uchiha do not go through ninja training and therefore most do not ever run into the chance to awaken it. Others have diluted genes and have lost the ability to spread the Sharingan or use it. Even then, most Uchiha who enter ninja service at one time or another get the chance to activate it, then they can train it to become more powerful. Naruto thought about it for a moment before asking another, more personal question. Do you have them? Mikoto hesitated but nodded nonetheless. She didn't activate it much though since she became a housewife. Can I see them? That was where Mikoto started to think against continuing the conversation. He was obviously tired and she wasn't sure he knew what he was saying. Naruto-kun. Many think of our eyes as scary. I don't want to give you nightmares. Naruto shook his head, he was determined to see it. Miko-chan isn't scary, I want to see them. She sighed, he obviously wasn't going to stop until she showed him. Okay. But just for a little while, okay. Naruto nodded and Mikoto closed her eyes for dramatic effect, activating her Sharingan. Opening them, Naruto's eyes stopped wandering as the only thing in the room that wasn't dark lit up. Her eyes were blood red now with 3 tomos in the middle surrounding a circle where her iris was. Wow, Naruto said quietly, reaching a little hand up to touch. Mikoto guided it to her cheek and let him lean up to get a closer look, finding it cute how he was amused by her eyes. Miko-chan. You have pretty red eyes. She blushed, betraying herself. You aren't scared. Are you, Naruto? She said as more of a statement to confirm it. He shook his head. No. Ka-san's eyes are pretty as red and black. Mikoto gasped. He called her mother. Maybe it was because he was starting to doze off though. She watched him slouch back into bed. Since I'm an Uchiha now, does that mean I get red eyes too? So young and foolish, she thought. He based things off names, not blood and DNA. She took a sympathetic smile as she deactivated the Sharingan and leaned over him to kiss his forehead goodnight. No, Naruto. You have to be born an Uchiha to get our eyes. I'm sorry. Naruto frowned but soon yawned as she kissed him and brought the blankets up to his face. Maybe. His voice grew to a whisper as he began to drift into his dreams. There is another way. For me to get eyes like Ka-san. Mikoto's eyes widened. Would he go that far? Mikoto was in the kitchen preparing a meal for the 2 children in her care before they went off to school. All had woken up early so they could have family talk of sorts and they were waiting patiently in the family room for her to come out. The Uchiha mother had placed her bloody apron away and adopted more presentable outfit under her cooking apron, a tight red sweater with a pair of blue pants and her lace sandals. Not worthy of combat, but good enough for a meeting with the elders. That was something she had the pleasure of experiencing today as well, she thought with a scowl. A messenger had told her of a scheduled meeting between the surviving Uchiha matriarch and the village council. The title they gave her surely was a sad attempt of kissing up to her to give them an edge in negotiations. It would do them little good though because all they would be discussing is the Uchiha's future in Konoha, what little to discuss there was. I won't let them take advantage of my Sasuke. Even if it means sacrificing my own future. Mikoto thought with a grimace, They would surely go for the younger Uchiha while she was still able to be influenced over her mother's own terms if she had to guess as well. There was also the case of Itachi, the last remaining male Uchiha, and her son. Where did he leave Konoha for? Why hadn't the village sent hunter nins after him already? There was something odd about how nonchalant they were about him leaving, even if it was their orders that led him to do so. That was something she would bring up at the meeting as well. There was no one in Konoha she could trust, not even the Hokage. No matter how noble and honest he was with her, Mikoto knew that a part of him totally agreed with the outcome that came from the destruction of her clan. Even a part of her knew that Konoha would be in dire straits if the Uchiha had been allowed to continue with their plans. The Uchiha were her clan though, there was no doubt which side she was loyal to, and the council had to know that. That was why they were going to try and control her now. She could hear their laughter from the other room, those two were the only ones she could trust. That meant she would do whatever it took to protect them. Ka-san, hurry up. Sasuke's voice rang through the thin sliding doors and Mikoto looked back at her cooking to see it was done. Fish with some rice and soup, a quick and light breakfast. It's coming, you two. With expertise rivaling a waitress, Mikoto entered the family room with all three of their meals to set down on the small table. Naruto and Sasuke sat next to each other as usual and Mikoto sat across from them, eating their food in relative silence. They were still getting used to one another and how they acted. Naruto hadn't been in such a formal setting before and didn't know how to act, so he reverted to being shy. Sasuke and Mikoto were nervous they would scare him further, so they didn't say anything. Naruto-kun. Mikoto broke the silence and Naruto brought his attention from his food to her. You know, I already stocked your closet with clothing that Itachi had when he was your age. Did you like any of them? She asked to broach the subject of his new clothing as Naruto now wore a black shirt and beige shorts. I like them, Miko-chan. Are you sure I can wear them though? They are pretty new and stuff. Naruto never got new clothing or knew anything, everything was hand-me-downs from the Hokage. Of course you can wear them, Naruto. Mikoto chided with a laugh. They are your clothes now. Naruto blushed and nodded, still not used to such generosity. You can get clothes like mine with the Uchiha fan after you pass the fireball test, Naruto. He looked at Sasuke as she turned around to let him see the Uchiha fan proudly stamped on her blue, high-collar shirt. Fireball test. Naruto looked expectantly at Mikoto and she brushed a strand of hair back uncomfortably, silently berating her daughter for broaching the subject so carelessly. What if he doesn't have a fire affinity? At his age, Naruto wouldn't understand and would get crushed if he couldn't do the technique. He isn't a natural-born Uchiha like Sasuke. All young Uchiha are given a test by their parents to see if they have earned the right to be called an Uchiha and wear the fan on their clothing. The test is to see if you can use the Uchiha clan jutsu, Gokakyu. Whether you pass or fail the first time, you won't be considered a true Uchiha unless you can do that jutsu. It's an old tradition passed down since a young Uchiha youth created the fireball jutsu. All Uchiha believe that if their child can create it at the same age, they are destined to be a prodigy. Naruto seemed excited over the prospect of trying it while Mikoto was still apprehensive. When can I try it then? Mikoto gave an awkward smile and hesitated a moment. Well, we will have to do it sometime tomorrow, Naru-chan. Ka-san has a meeting today right after breakfast and it can't wait, so I won't have time to teach you the technique. I promise we will do it though. Naruto deflated a bit but cheered up when she promised they would get around to it. Don't worry, Ka-san, I can teach him the jutsu after school today to give him a head start. That way he can shoot a fireball to welcome you back from your meeting. Sasuke encouraged him and he smiled at her, thankful she would do that for him. Thanks, Sasuke. Naruto blushed in embarrassment when she gave him a sweet smile. Don't worry, Naruto, that's what brother and sister are supposed to do. Mikoto instantly smiled when she heard that. The two were getting along just fine. Okay, you two, it's time for you to get going or else you'll be late for class. Mikoto ushered them out with lunch and a wave goodbye while she quickly set to doing the dishes so she wouldn't leave any strings at home. It didn't take long before her household chores were done. Really, she didn't mind being late to the meeting just to spite the elders. It was the least discomfort they could have in return for what happened to her. Mikoto didn't know how long she would hold the grudge against them, perhaps forever. If so, they had better be prepared to endure such hardships while she was still alive. 000. Hokage House. Office. Hiruzen sat at his desk with Homura and Koharu flanking his sides as usual, albeit they were quite impatient at the time. Mikoto Uchiha, the one they had called a meeting for, was over 15 minutes late. For a civilian that was a little disappointing. For a ninja to be late, it was obvious they were being mocked. The Hokage knew, of course. Mikoto was quite aware of the meeting and the time, but she could afford to be late. With what we will discuss, can you blame her? I would be hesitant in her position as well. Where is that damn woman? Homura muttered in anger. She had the nerve to stand them up at such a critical time. She will be here soon. In fact, I think we will be seeing her very shortly. Hiruzen calmed his teammate and soon enough, Mikoto joined them in the office. She said nothing as she walked to her seat with a straight face and sat down, looking directly at the Hokage. They took this as the meeting start and began to lay into her immediately. Welcome, Mikoto-san, although I feel you might have gotten the times mixed up in your head. Koharu carefully scolded the grown woman as she indicated the clock. We are over 15 minutes late in starting this session because of your tardiness. No mistake was made, elder. I was not informed of the gravity of this meeting, therefore I did not take the time given as compulsory. Hiruzen thought he detected some haughtiness to Mikoto's tone and knew she was getting angry. That aside, Hiruzen stepped in to keep the peace. This meeting has been called to assess the situation of the Uchiha currently and for future efforts in continuing the bloodline in Konoha. He did not wish to use the CRA as a proper term, nor did breeding seem like an appropriate word either. Either translation further made to unsettle Mikoto in her seat. Yes, would you please give us a complete rundown of the Uchiha clan and its current members? Uchiha Dono. Suddenly they gave her the respect a matriarch deserved, the spiteful bastards. We have suffered grievous losses after the massacre. One might I add, you forced on us elders. This wouldn't be necessary if the outcome had been different. Mikoto retorted, as if they didn't know where the Uchiha stood. They probably had each pair of eyes recovered counted with a certain amount of glee. Touché, Hiruzen thought as Mikoto bit back at them. The woman took out some notes she wrote down from her study in the compound after receiving some information from the medical nins in charge of the Uchiha dead. Our casualty list just recently arrived from the morgue. Numbers and names were detailed. 62 Uchiha are dead, this includes children and elderly. Mikoto glanced at the elders to see if they reacted, but received nothing but a quirk of lips. She sighed and continued. 40 pairs of Sharingan eyes have been confirmed recovered while the rest did not test positive for the dojutsu activated, therefore rendering them useless. That was a point the elders were a bit disappointed in. If only all Uchiha had some form of the dojutsu activated, they would have had a higher amount of genes to choose from. On a side note, Mikoto glanced up from her notes with an accusing glare at the three in front of her. I have no record of Uchiha Shisui's eyes being recovered, nor his body being located in the morgue. Would you elders or the Hokage mind telling me where he is? There was an edge to her voice, suspicion of foul play. I was not alerted that Shisui was not among the dead. Then again he was killed a few weeks previously, correct Mikoto-san? The Hokage asked, genuinely confused at the situation. The two elders remained silent, but also thought the disappearance of the body was odd. Yes, that is correct. However, to the best of my knowledge he was kept in the morgue until this point in time because my hus. Mikoto paused in the middle of the word. Fugaku decided to keep him from being buried until we could have a proper funeral. We were busy at the time. Mikoto ended quietly, indirectly admitting to their time plotting the coup. We will have this matter investigated immediately, Uchiha Dono, you have our word. The disappearance of such a prestigious shinobi like Shisui-san is a disgrace and must be rectified immediately. Homura declared and received a nod of agreement from Kaharu and Sarutobi. Mikoto knew it was just being polite, but as long as they found the body she didn't care. Shisui had very powerful, very dangerous eyes. If someone stole his body to use for themselves, that will cause trouble later on. Moving on. What, in your opinion, is the Uchiha's current status, Uchiha Dono? Kaharu progressed the meeting after a moment of awkward silence when they were left to their own thoughts. There isn't much of a clan left, elder. There is myself, the matriarch, along with my children. Our compound is in perfect shape though and our clan archive remains untouched. We have the facilities for more clansmen, but for now we have no way of getting back our former strength. At this the elder's attitude turned from neutral to devious and Mikoto and Hiruzen both knew where it was going. Ah, we have found a way to rectify the problem, Uchiha Dono. When a clan is in dire straits, the Clan Restoration Act is placed upon their family until the size of the clan is well enough to sustain itself without such emergency measures. May we presume you know of what it details? Homura stated with hidden excitement and Mikoto resisted the urge to vomit, giving a shrug instead. Enlighten me of the procedure, elder. He was hoping she would say something like that. While this usually only pertains to the males of the clan, in such an unfortunate case as the Uchiha are in we only have females left. That means we must be extremely careful with the breeding pairs we give you to make sure your clan has the best chance of continuing with the Sharingan and any other positive genes we can get from the father. Hiruzen listened as his teammate explained the act to the woman, silently hoping Mikoto would not overreact as he had warned her beforehand. While you may begin breeding immediately, Uchiha Dono, your daughter will have to wait. However, not one to be unprepared, Kaharu now continued the explanation. We can still set up her future partners for when she turns the healthy childbearing age of 16, she will be fully prepared to continue the Uchiha line. Of course there will be time for you to rest between births and we will take care of any help you may need in caring for them while you are busy fulfilling the CRA. Mikoto found the thought disgusting, forcing them to have multiple partners and not even getting to take care of their children afterward. The elders must have been out of their minds if they thought she would allow this. Unfortunately, she could not just be allowed to do nothing when the Uchiha and more importantly the Sharingan meant so much to Konoha's military strength. Whether she liked the idea or not, Mikoto would be forced into having someone's children much sooner than she would care to. But if there was a chance to spare Sasuke, at least until she found the right one, Mikoto would find a loophole. Before we continue, elders, at least let me speak my mind on the subject, as this is my body and my daughters that we are talking about. I will not allow myself but more so my daughter to be forced into a pairing where there is no relationship, only duty. I have been in a relationship like that for the past 12 years and I did not like the experience. The elders had hoped she would remain quiet and docile, but of course she would speak her mind to them. Uchiha Dono, you must understand it's a difficult balance between your feelings on the matter and the duty to the village and your clan to continue. Mikoto's glare cut the elder off and let her have the floor again. I will decide how far my loyalty to the village goes, and I damn well know my duty to my clan. My daughter and I will most likely have children in our futures, however, it will be with someone we wish to have children with and not yours. Just as the elders were thinking of a smart retort, Danzo decided to make his presence known. Uchiha-san, you should know such a weak excuse will not allow you to escape the CRA so easily. Mikoto twisted in her seat to see Danzo shuffle in and look at her with a thinly opened eye, like a constant glare. Sympathy is not my strong point, so excuse me for not feeling too much over your past experience. Your past husband failed as a Konoha shinobi and is a lover, but that doesn't. Mikoto had kicked over her chair as she stood up in pure outrage over his accusation. Danzo, what is the meaning of this? You were not to come. Sarutobi did not like his old comrade's entrance already and hoped to cut it short. I'm sorry, Sarutobi, but I cannot allow this woman to jeopardize the future of a great bloodline because she allows her feelings to get in the way of the village's best interest. Now Uchiha-san, if you want to leave this meeting without even stricter restraints on your clan and your daughter, I highly suggest you give us a name for you and your daughter's future husband or husbands if you do so choose. Mikoto flinched and realized he had backed her into a corner. It was true, Danzo and the elders could make the Uchiha have an even worse time in Konoha than they were now. Even worse, an accident could befall her, leaving her unable to care for Sasuke and Naruto and leave them for the Vulture Council. Danzo enjoyed seeing the woman deflate as she realized just what power he held. He only came because he knew the elders would fail in persuading her. The woman was stubborn and was thinking with her heart when she should think with her head. How? How can you expect me to have an answer to such a question so quickly? Mikoto was at a loss for words. What was she to say in response to that? It was a life-changing decision who you would marry and have children with, definitely not one that could be made in a few moments. Danzo, your interruption has disrupted this meeting. I should adjourn it right now for your disrespect of this council and the Uchiha. But it is true that Mikoto-san must make a decision. I need to speak with her in private for a moment. Hiruzen looked at his two teammates and inclined his neck toward the door. Elders, please excuse yourselves for a few minutes. Koharu and Homura were flabbergasted, too shocked to say anything in response as they slowly shuffled out. Danzo left a lingering glare before joining them in the hallway and closing the door behind them. Hiruzen sighed and waved a hand toward another chair that Mikoto hadn't knocked down, but she refused to calm herself. Mikoto, I know this is a troubling development, but I have to agree with Danzo. Making a premature decision can most definitely be life-changing for the both of you, but that doesn't mean you can't change your mind in the future. Your daughter still has many years before she is of age where this will be implemented. Hiruzen stood beside her, speaking encouragingly in her ear as she shook with rage. And there are ways for you to avoid the CRA as well. Do you remember what I told you yesterday? Mikoto thought back and couldn't believe he was having her consider the idea. It was disgusting. A younger man, Hokage-sama. How can you ask me to choose a boy where I am twice his age? How will he even take it knowing he is to breed with a total stranger? She said the word with disgust. I can't do that. Besides, I know no boy that would be young enough to keep me from having with him for more than a few years. Hiruzen sighed. He had already thought of a suggestion. No matter how outrageous she would think it was, he would give it a shot regardless. As he said before though, it was merely a delay tactic, or at least that would be all Mikoto would have to see it as. How about you choose Naruto as your daughters and your own choice? Mikoto had been staring at the floor until that point but was now openly gaping at the Hokage. Naruto. But he is only 7 years old. And I adopted him as an Uchiha. We are practically mother and son now, he wouldn't understand. I would feel like I'm betraying his trust by using him like that. Hiruzen nodded. He could see where she was coming from. I know Makoto-san. But Naruto does not have to know of the arrangement between you two until he is older when you have to fulfill the CRA. Telling him of his engagement to Sasuke, however, would be satisfactory and keep them both from asking any further questions. Mikoto calmed a bit but still looked unsure over the situation, feeling a pit of guilt growing in her stomach. Hiruzen moved closer to her and put a comforting hand on her shoulder, indicating she look at him. Mikoto, I'm very sorry that you have been thrust into the spotlight like this. If anything, you should be mourning your clan right now, and my teammates and I should be kissing your feet in apologies. However, we both must look at the situation at what is best for you and your children. Introducing a total stranger as your partner to the children will affect them terribly at this young of age, not to mention you yourself would not be happy at all. Naruto and Sasuke surely get along and would have plenty of time to warm up to the idea of marriage, giving you plenty of time to find the right partner as they grow up. Who knows, you might even decide to choose Naruto as well, no matter how outrageous that sounds now. He quickly added the outrageous part, seeing her disgusted face. It wasn't that she didn't think Naruto to be an unattractive boy when he would grow up. Being the son of the Yondaime surely gave her plenty to imagine in his older age. However, she had already begun to see him as a son and felt that he saw her as an adult and maybe later a mother. Their relationship couldn't go farther than that in her eyes as long as the two kept on the same thought process. I think you are right, Hokage-sama. I'm afraid they won't allow it though, especially not for the both of us. He is seen to them as the Jinchuriki, a powerful tool to the village, not some select male breeding stock. Hiruzen pondered it for a moment before moving over to his desk and opening up a drawer where he pulled out a scroll. Well then, he said with a smirk. We will just have to prove to them he is proper breeding material. 000. Uchiha Compound. Pier. Naruto and Sasuke were coming home after a long day of school. Nothing much new was learned that day and the two new family members were excited for their next activity. Sasuke was leading him through the compound to the pier. Her father took her to take the initiation test herself. There she would teach him the hand signs and let him try it. Of course she had no idea how to actually teach someone a technique at her age. For Uchiha, the fire affinity usually came quite naturally and didn't take much effort for such a simple jutsu to be formed. Naruto was a wild card in the subject though. There was no telling if he could even manipulate fire, let alone control his chakra for it. The day was sunny, as usual for the warm fire country. Even though she knew it had no real effect on fire jutsu, Sasuke always liked to think that the sun gave her luck with her initiation test. Maybe Naruto would get that luck too. Come on Naruto, it's over here. Sasuke ran ahead of Naruto as he did his best to keep up. He had plenty of energy but she seemed to be bursting at the seams. Wait up Sasuke-chan, I can't run that fast. She ignored him and ran ahead, coming to a stop at the mouth of the pier on the small lake on the edge of the compound. It was then her excited smile gave way to a small frown. This was one of the only fond memories she had of her father. It was here she pulled him along to see her successful fireball and where he had shown her a smile, one that was directed to her with pride. He had never done that before with her, not even with her good grades. He always saved them for Itachi. Sasuke had her mother for praise and smiles, but she still wanted approval from her father. Because he reserved his only for when he was truly impressed, that was why it made such an impact on her. And now, he was dead, killed by the man who he poured all his pride and love into. Sasuke felt so vulnerable at that moment, she didn't even realize a few tears had fallen from her eyes. Naruto had finally caught up with the girl to see she was just standing there, not saying anything. Since she was staring at the pier, her back was toward him, keeping him from seeing her tears. Naruto saw her shake a bit and went over to see what was wrong, confused at her sudden change. Sasuke. Are you okay? This woke the girl up and she quickly brushed her cheeks free of the tears. No need to worry Naruto with my problems. He's dead now anyway. Itachi is out of my reach too. Right now I just have to care for Naruto and Ka-san. Yeah, Sasuke replied, coughing a bit to quiet the flutter in her voice. I'm fine Naruto. Come on, I'll show you the hand signs now. Naruto kept staring at her for a second but then shrugged in ignorance. Absolute zero ability in reading emotions. Sasuke went through the hand signs once slowly for Naruto to see, giving him a chance to practice with just the movements. Then, going through them with a practiced speed and ease, Sasuke created a small fireball that extended some amount over the water from the pier. Naruto watched the fire blow in the wind with a trance as it raced from Sasuke's mouth and then dissipated back to its point of origin. Okay Naruto, you try. What followed for 2 full hours was Naruto's attempt at channeling his overwhelming amounts of chakra into a fireball. Unfortunately, his body just could not get a handle on the manipulation of the chakra, let alone infusing it with a nature affinity he might not have had. Naruto felt it was a bad start to training, but Sasuke took it especially hard as she thought it was her fault. Sorry Naruto-kun. Sasuke teared up a bit as she apologized to the confused Naruto. I must be a terrible sensei if I couldn't help you learn a jutsu so simple like this. Maybe Iruka-sensei could. Naruto cut her off with a hug that shocked her into quiet. That's not it Sasuke-chan, I'm sure with more practice I can get it. You are a great teacher, I like listening to you a lot more than Iruka-sensei. Not to mention you're prettier than him. Sasuke blushed at his comment, even if Naruto was ignorantly comparing her cuteness to a guy. I'll take what I can get. Thank you Naruto. How about we go home for today and try again tomorrow? I bet Ka-san is back from her meeting by now anyway. We should welcome her. Naruto agreed and the two set off for home, feeling better than when they arrived. 000. Mikoto's house. Family room. Mikoto waited for the children to arrive, however, she was too lost in her own thoughts to hear the door open and shut with childish laughter and the pitter-patter of feet on wood to notice the arrival of her children. She had just promised her daughter and herself to a 7-year-old boy who was the outcast of the village. Was that not crossing some line? What would her friend Kushina say to her marrying her son? You go girl. Show Sochi-kun how a cougar does it. Mikoto blushed. Better she not think of it. Still though, the prospect of morality wasn't the only thing that concerned her. The council's demands were strict and binding to the contract CRA, they would have no choice to follow if they wanted any semblance of freedom in the village. To protect her children, she would have had to have taken this course of action, which is why she did so. The elders were at first outraged at the thought of us marrying Naruto, but with Hiruzen's quick thinking and persuasive tactics allowed them to think they had all bases covered. In a way they do though, no matter what will happen with my choices, they will get Uchiha children. Still though, at least Sasuke may be happy with the choice. Ka-san. Naruto and Sasuke tackled the woman as she sat there in a trance, waking her up from her inner thoughts. The family shared a laugh as they lay on the cold floor, just staring at the ceiling in a moment of closeness. Mikoto glanced at the two and noticed how they seemed happy, so oblivious to the world of problems that surrounded them. Better it stay that way though, she thought. What was a child without blissful ignorance? It was their right after all. How was school today you two? Mikoto asked and got the usual grumbles, even from Sasuke. It looked like Naruto's enthusiasm for school was rubbing off on her honor student. We will be learning about chakra manipulation and nature elements next though mother, so maybe Naruto can do the initiation afterward. Mikoto was reminded of Naruto's initiation by that remark and made to ask how it went. I didn't pass Ka-san. Naruto said quietly as he looked up at her with disappointed eyes. But I will keep trying so I can be a real Uchiha, like you said. I want to be with you guys. Mikoto smiled as she felt him hug her tighter and rubbed his back in comfort. You already are with us, Naruto-kun. Don't feel pressured into completing the technique. Since you are going to learn about it anyway, I'll tell you about nature chakra now. The 5 basic elements are water, earth, wind, fire, and lightning. Each person has at least one affinity and can train themselves to harness more, but there is no guarantee of one particular element. Mikoto lectured them in a professional, motherly tone on the subject as it wasn't something academy students could grasp easily without first-hand knowledge. Naruto, natural-born Uchiha generally always have a fire affinity, meaning they can use fire techniques without any intensive training. You come from the Uzumaki though, a very well-known clan that used water as a primary affinity. Naruto suddenly felt very down that he had the opposite affinity, but Mikoto encouraged him to continue listening. But that doesn't mean you have water and it doesn't mean you don't have fire. We will just have to have you practice and see what you can and can't do. I know if you work hard enough, you can master any technique. Sasuke, who was on the other side of Mikoto, sat up to look at Naruto and smiled. Yeah, Naruto, you are an Uchiha like us. Uchiha are powerful and can learn any technique, so I'm sure you can learn Gokaku in no time. Naruto felt encouraged and nodded in assent, making that part of the conversation done. So Ka-san, how did your meeting go? Sasuke asked after a while of more silence and staring at the ceiling. Mikoto knew this was coming up and decided against keeping much from either of them, just what Hiruzen suggested. If Naruto knew he was marrying both of them, the thoughts of her being his mother and wife would confuse his young mind between both titles and could break their current relationship. Besides, it wasn't anything he had to worry about for a while. The council said that I have to be pregnant by him turning 18, so we have plenty of time for me to think of something. Mikoto was at least thankful they had so much time, not expecting the elders to give them such space to work with. Well, the Hokage and I talked about the Uchiha and what will happen with us in the future. She had a pause halfway through, trying to think of the best way to word it. The kids didn't mind and listened closely. The Hokage said that because the Uchiha are so powerful, we have to make sure that we have ways to keep the clan going in the future. This is so difficult with children so young as them. I can't use the terms or breed or else they will overreact. Yeah. How do we make more Uchiha, Ka-san? Sasuke muttered in thought, trying to figure out how that would work out. Her mother had the decency to hide her blush and cursed as Naruto seemed to adopt a thinking pose too. That's something you will find out when you are older. Their mother's quick reply made them quiet down and accept it for truth, allowing her to continue with her awkwardly worded conversation. It was decided that we had to ensure that in the future we could have more Uchiha, and that you two could stay together very closely to help with this. Sasuke seemed to be catching on, something her mother wasn't surprised of. However, Naruto seemed to still be trying to wrap his head around the idea. Hopefully he will grow out of this. It's probably because he doesn't have much experience with people. You two are engaged to be wed in the future, when you are older. This is to ensure the clan's line continues without any problems. Mikoto trailed off as her daughter blushed and Naruto was still thinking, apparently not hearing what she said. We are going to be like you and Tu-san. Mikoto just nodded, accepting the comparison. Hopefully there will be more love though than our marriage. Then again, It's starting out just like ours did, an arranged one. Sasuke said nothing, mulling the thought over. She liked Naruto, sure, but at such a young age it was impossible to think over such a big change to her future. It would take time, she figured, to get used to, but her mother was someone she could trust and they would have plenty of time to think it over and get used to each other. Okay. I trust you, Ka-san. Mikoto smiled and gave her daughter small hug as Naruto was still sitting up, thinking over what she had said. So, the two turned to him, figuring he had arrived at a conclusion finally. Is this marriage thing like some special brother-sister thing the Uchiha do? Because I don't know what it is. Mikoto just gaped at him in amazement he didn't understand yet, and Sasuke grumbled and sighed. My future husband is a baka. Great. She droned sarcastically while Mikoto started explaining the prospect of two people being married. Once Naruto had been thoroughly explained to the whole process, he was fully embarrassed and blushing like Sasuke was. Still though, he was 7 and they both didn't comprehend everything that went into marriage even if they thought they did. They've got plenty of time too. Sasuke has to have a child by 16. By then it will be clear if they like each other or not, if not then they will have plenty of friends from the academy to choose from. Mikoto was as satisfied as she could be with the outcome of things, if only for now. Alright you two. It's getting late. I'll go make us some food and then it's off to bed for you two. Mikoto hurried to the task she had given to herself while they went out into the garden to bathe in the last of the sun's rays. Mikoto watched them play through the kitchen window, smiling at their carefree attitudes even after such a bomb had been dropped on them, regardless of her trying to soften the blow. As long as they are still smiling, I have a reason to keep trying for Konoha and for the Uchiha. 000. Mikoto's home. Naruto's room. Mikoto was tucking Naruto in again as she did the previous night, however, this time she had to broach a particular subject to him as it was brought up by the council. Hiruzen was not wrong when he mused on their interest in the Sharingan for future transplant operations. What he nor Mikoto had expected was they put Naruto forward as one of the receivers. While they knew that giving him the Sharingan would in no way increase the chance of her or Sasuke having children with the gene, they figured it would be a worthy investment into the village's weapon if they could give him the Sharingan eyes. It was even more in favor because he was now adopted into the Uchiha family, who better for him to help harness these powers than the owners of it themselves. If Mikoto wasn't around, she seriously doubted they would still consider the transplant, for he would have no one to learn from, a book in the hands of a person who was illiterate. But what mattered to her the most was Naruto's opinion. If he didn't want the eyes then she wouldn't let him have them, end of story. Even if she knew she could train him to protect himself better with them if they forced the eyes on him, she would not force the boy through any more than he had already been through of manipulation. Naru-kun. Mikoto purred in his ear as his tired eyes turned to her, noticing she still remained at his bedside when he was covered by blanket. Yes, Miko-chan. He responded with a tired yawn, saying her nickname again in response to her name for him. Do you remember when you asked me about the Sharingan? He nodded. You said you wanted the red eyes. Why do you want them? Naruto's tiredness set aside for later, he sat up in bed and looked into her onyx orbs with determination. Why are you asking, Ka-san? Mikoto swallowed the lump in her throat and continued hesitantly. Ka-san can give you the red eyes you want. But you will lose your blue ones. Do you want that? She was almost choking up with tears asking him this. How could she make a 7-year-old choose to lose something as personal as his own eyes? Naruto's response made her almost choke. Yes, I want that, Ka-san. I want the red eyes. He said it so seriously that she couldn't even put it off as a joke. What did he mean he wanted them? Naruto. Do you know what you are saying? Why would you give up your blue eyes when you've had them forever? Naruto looked down at his blanket and gripped it tightly with his hands, knuckles turning white. I want to be strong enough to protect Ka-san and Sasuke, just like Itachi said to. Mikoto flinched at her son's name but was surprised Naruto cared that much to protect them when they had only known each other for a few days. If I can be strong with the red eyes. Naruto said with emotion choking up his throat too as he began to cry. I will lose my blue ones if I can protect you, Miko-chan. She couldn't help but feel warm at his vow to protect her, even if it came from a 7-year-old.